So, bonjour tout le monde. Alors, je suis heureuse de faire une autre entrevue aujourd'hui et cette entrevue sera ma première entrevue en anglais avec une femme remarquable que j'ai eu la chance de rencontrer à Londres au mois de mars. So this is my first interview. I'm very happy. My first interview in English, and it's with a lovely lady that I met in London during the month of March, and her name is Paula Coston. So, welcome, Paula. I'm very happy to talk to you today.
Thank you, and merci beaucoup.
Oh, nice. So, Paula, if you could introduce yourself and give us, if you don't mind, your age and what you do, and also you are a childless woman, and maybe shortly explain us why you are childless.
Okay, I'll try. I'm 59 years old now, and yes, you're right, I'm childless. My current occupation is I work for a university as an administrator, but my real passion is writing and blogging, and more writing and blogging about, guess what subject? Childlessness, and the single woman as well is another interesting topic for me, and also the older woman, because I think those are three key areas that for me all overlap, because I'm all those things. And I learned a new word today, intersectionality, which apparently means when you have more than one of these issues going on for yourself. So
Wow.
I thought that was an interesting word. So yes, I'm childless, and I learned a new term recently, another one, social infertility.
Yeah.
In other words, my reason is not biological infertility. I know from various things that have happened to me that I could have had children, but of course now I'm through the menopause, so I can't anymore anyway. But my reasons are more to do with never having found the right person, with having been very busy in my career and finding it very hard to do enough dating and looking for the right man at the right time. And I was pursuing a very interesting career in London in the 1970s and 80s in book publishing, and I got very involved in that. But I was looking for a man, but this was before the internet, so it was very hard then. So gradually I started seeing my friends, a lot of them going into relationships and starting to have families, and realising I felt left behind, and that maybe this wasn't going to happen for me, and that made me very sad and very anxious. And at one stage I did try to adopt a child as a single adopter. And I did that for 3 years. At the end of that time, I gave up because it had taken so much emotional strain to keep going with it, with a lot of disappointment and a lot of bureaucracy. So finally, I reached the menopause, and sadly, I had still not had children. And that's why I'm the way I am today.
Very interesting. Thank you, Paula. Could you explain to our viewers how we met? Which is quite interesting, and what happened actually when we met?
Well, we first met online, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
The wonderful online community Gateway Women, which is www.gateway-women.com. And we talked a little bit, and I was very excited when I saw you were starting a blog, because I was a fellow blogger. We began to talk about that, and I tried to give you lots of encouragement. And then I was very, very happy to learn that you were coming to London for the World of the Women Festival on the South Bank, and to meet other Gateway women. And we met up at International Women's Day, which was on the South Bank of the London Thames, where lots of events were going on to do with women's issues in general, including several to do with women and childlessness. And that's how we met, and it was great to meet you, and we had some wonderful conversations, and met lots of other women, actually, didn't we? That neither of us had met before, and spent a lovely day with them. It was a beautiful sunny day. We had meals and drinks and wandered around doing different things the whole day long.
Of course. And then, while we met for supper one night, we started to discuss our lives, and then we realized that we had planned something that was quite similar to help us through our grieving process, which is the planting of a tree. So, in my grieving process, I had to, at one point, find a way to move on. And I wanted to try to do this with my family around me. And I thought a good way to do this, it was planning a ceremony and planting a tree in a park in my city. And then during my preparing all of this ceremony, I first had to choose one special tree that would be a good tree to plant in my area. So on my part, I decided to choose a maple tree, which is a very important tree in Canada, as you could imagine. And I chose to plant a maple tree for a specific reason, because the maple tree is a tree that lives for a very long time. So I really wanted my child to be living for as long as it could live. That what I would plant in a way would represent the child I will never have. And then I decided to do this ceremony with my mother, my dad, and my sister around me to support me and to be with me through this moment, which was quite moving actually. And would you mind telling us the way you planned the same ceremony?
Yes, I came about in a very different way.
Really?
The way it happened for me was that when I was blogging on my own blog, but also for Gateway Women, I started looking into creativity and the link between childless women and their creativity. And I was interested to ask quite a lot of them, did they find maybe there was even an impetus to create more when they were beginning to process the whole childlessness thing? And one thing that came through with a lot of them was that, yes, that was the case, and they didn't know if it was a causal thing or not, but that it certainly helped them, and it helped them to have a feeling of healing. And one common thread that came through with many of them, that one of their favourite forms of creativity was some kind of gardening or planting.
Really?
And I thought that was fascinating. When I looked into this, I thought I'd really like to write a post about this. And I discovered that in India, there's an 80, I think she's about 89-year-old woman now, an Indian woman, who lives in a little rural community in India, and she's called Salimarada Thimaka. Salimarada is apparently her nickname, and it means tree planter, so her name is actually Thimaka, so she's now known as the tree planting Thimaka. And she was brought up in a very backward little tiny village with a husband, but they could never have children. And she got a lot of teasing and a lot of bad comments from all her neighbours for not having children, as you can imagine in that kind of community. And so instead of having children, she decided to plant trees and regard them as her children. And she began what is now a huge, majestic avenue of 284 banyan trees. They're now fully grown and a very beautiful avenue, also worth a lot of money, actually, too. Such a wonderful environmental feature where she lives. Now, I was really inspired by this story. I thought it was the most wonderful story. She works in a quarry, or at least she used to. I assume perhaps she doesn't anymore. Very, very poor lady, but she still managed every day to tend to them as if they were her children, to water them, to talk to them, to see them as if they were growing up, very much like your experience. Wow, I'd love to do something like that. And I did ask some Gateway Women if they'd be interested or if they knew of any projects. Then suddenly one day in my own local town, I discovered that they were planning a big new tree planting drive for several parts of the town where they'd been doing work and they wanted to make it look beautiful again. And one was in my local park, just like yours, where they have a lot of new work going on. It was on the crest of a hill with beautiful views over the hills and valleys of where I live. And so I contacted the people who were doing this and said, is there any chance I could be one of the people who came to help you? But I said, I'm speaking on behalf of possibly some other childless women and I'd love to see if I could get some others to help me. Now,
Hmm.
interestingly, my family doesn't live in my town, so it wouldn't have been easy to gather them together. Like you, I'm very close to my family, but geographically, they're quite a long way away. So instead, I decided that I still wanted, it's funny that we have this in common, I wanted this sense of closeness with some other people witnessing this around me. I
Mm-hmm.
really felt that strongly, to give it the power and the sense of ritual that I felt was behind it for me. So I did advertise, and not a single woman in my town answered my advertisements. I even
Really?
went on the local radio and asked for volunteers. I said you could stay anonymous, still nobody.
Hmm.
Finally, I remembered that there were some neighbours who lived right where I live, that some of them were childless, and I thought I would approach them quietly, one by one, just very quietly and gently, and see if anyone would be willing to come with me. And one said she would.
Oh, nice.
She came with me, a lovely lady, Anne, and we went and we planted trees. And one of my trees was a maple as well. So we planted
Really?
several.
I didn't know
Yes,
that.
so we have that in common. But the
Huh.
first one I planted was a flowering cherry. And I think I maybe planted about 10 this beautiful spring morning in my local town, and Anne about the same. We managed to finish off an avenue of oak trees between us, which was very exciting because it's a long, beautiful avenue, or it will be one day.
Hmm.
Again, I thought of my Indian lady with her avenue, and I loved it. I found it quite moving. I
It
nearly
is.
cried at one point. I must say, I nearly cried at one point.
Yeah, I
And
did too.
I found that one thing that was very important to me about it was to know the name of the tree, because obviously when they're little, they're just like little saplings. And there was a man showing us how to plant them.
Yeah.
And I said, please tell me, what kind of tree is this? It's
Mm-hmm.
very important. I didn't just plant it in the ground not knowing. A bit like a child, I needed to know its name.
Yes.
And as I put it in the ground, I suddenly had another thought that I thought I might like to do, and I did do this. I wrote a postcard to the child I had not had, and I planted it in the hole with the tree. So I covered it in earth and then put the root ball of the tree in afterwards and then made it all nice. And because, as I've told you the story of trying to adopt children, there are quite a few children I feel I've never had. I feel that they're there somewhere, the children I never had, and it's a kind of thing that gives me some kind of strength in a strange way, to think maybe they're living somewhere else. It's just a kind of belief I have. So I felt that at least 5 times while I was planting these trees, that each one was representing a child that I have not had, and that they had a different personality. And I just loved it. It was fantastic. It was a wonderful thing to do. It really helped me. Quite moving, and I felt quite tired afterwards, emotionally tired.
Of course. I remember when I planted my tree, I had decided to write on a piece of paper why I wanted to have kids. Like, I did it like a freeing exercise, really. Just putting down on a piece of paper all the reasons why, and then I took my courage and read this out loud to my family that was surrounding me in this beautiful, beautiful park in my city. And then we just, obviously, we were all crying. And then, which was quite something to do, but very freeing also. And then I just put, like you, I put the paper under the tree and I just planted it. And it's still standing there. It's looking out on a beautiful lake in my city. And it's beautiful. And then I think I think actually doing this helped also my parents in a strange way because my sister don't have any children, doesn't have any children, and obviously I won't. And I think this is quite hard for my parents to also accept they won't have grandchildren. Don't so they need to grieve that too. And I think that helped them in a way too, doing this with me. So, yeah.
Yeah, how lovely. That's wonderful. I hugged Anne at the end. We just held each other very close, this lady. And she's a very reserved English lady, so she hasn't said much about her feelings. But she rang me especially afterwards to say how much it had meant to her to do that, and that it had really helped her too. So it was very special to that bond with another woman, I think. So even though I didn't have my family there, we were making a statement together, which was somehow much more powerful than trying to do that on your own.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, moving.
Yes, it's bringing it up again slightly for me now, but that's good, that's okay.
Yes, it's good. And Paula, could you tell us, there's something very special coming up for you, I think. You did create something that you're going to publish in a couple of, is it a couple of days or weeks?
Right, well, the official publication date is actually in June, but I'm starting some launch events next week for a novel that I've been writing for the last 3.5 years. It's about a childless woman in London gradually realising that she will probably be childless. And as you can imagine, it's partly based on my own experiences, but it has been a tremendous help to me to process my own feelings about childlessness. And it's not totally bleak, I hope. It has an aspect of magical realism to it, so it's got a kind of dream quality. It's about the dreams we have and the dreams we perhaps try to make for ourselves and the dreams we lose. And it's called On the Far Side, There's a Boy. On the Far Side, there's a boy. I've always wanted to have a boy child for some reason. I don't know why, but that's part of it. And it's been a very interesting experience going through this, because in my family, like yours, we are quite close. But I have realised that they still don't fully understand the extent of what I have been through until they will read this book, which they still haven't seen. But it has been very interesting because my sister, who has children, has been very empathetic with me about it and has been very, very kind to me. And she's been trying to explain to other members of my family how important this is to me.
Of course.
The main metaphor she has used is, she has said to the other members of my family, imagine if you like that now you were having a baby unexpectedly, and that you wanted Paula, your sister or your niece or whoever, whatever the relationship is, to come and see this baby. That is how important it is to Paula now that this book is coming out. And she's absolutely right. It is in a sense, my baby, you know.
Of
It is the closest I will come to creating something like a child that I've seen through a lot of stages, will want to see going out into the world. So yes, I'm hoping that everyone will find a lot of interesting things to think about in this book, about the situation we're in. And I've had lots of wonderful support from people like Jodie Day and the Gateway Women online network that she founded. They're all right behind me and looking forward to reading it. I think sometimes fiction can do something very different from writing a factual account of what we're going through.
Yes.
This is my aim anyway, to turn it into something else that makes it perhaps a little bit distant from us and intrigues us with the story and gets us to look at it in a new way.
Very brilliant, very good idea, I find. And then also you have a blog, which is named?
It's called Boy Woman, and so it's http://boywoman.wordpress.com. And on there I talk about, as I say, childlessness, singledom, the older woman, and the gender divide too, the things that perhaps women feel differently about from men, and where we find clashes with men sometimes, or between groups of women as well. Things like the differences between childless women and women who are mothers. all these things interest me a lot. So we have a lot in common, don't we?
I guess so, we do. So, my dear Paula, I will put all the links to your book and to your blog. And it was a pleasure to talk to you and to see you again. And like I said before, I wish I could give you a big hug. So,
Yes.
I'm sending you a big hug from Quebec. And
Thank you. Je t'embrasse.
oh, moi aussi. Alors, j'espère à bientôt.
À bientôt.
Merci.
Merci.